As she walked away from her daughter's grave, where she had laid her to rest just a few weeks prior, she noticed something unusual. A young boy walked past her, heading towards the grave. What could he be doing there? The boy gave her a smile as he walked by, trying not to read too much into it. She then saw something that sparked a profound reaction within her. The McRae family thought everything would always be perfect, but things would take a dark turn one day when their daughter, who'd recently turned 18, was in a tragic accident. Tammy broke down when she heard the news about her daughter. Things were going so well, and now her entire world was crashing down around her. Things would never be the same. Tammy married Chester right out of high school. The two had eyes for each other junior year, and by their senior year, they were together. By college, the two had their daughter Lindsay and were also engaged. To make things even better, they had an amazing wedding that felt out of a children's fairy tale. The three of them were so happy. Lindsay even got to lead the procession, and her parents could not have been prouder. After many years, Lindsay had grown into a beautiful young adult. Her parents were so happy with the woman she had become. She got great grades at school and always brought as much joy as she could to everyone she met. Apart from having a great daughter in Lindsay, Tammy and Chester also had a great house and stable jobs. But one day, it would all come crashing down. Their family was perfect. They had a great daughter, amazing jobs, and even a nice tidy house in the suburbs. But they had no idea what was to come. To understand what happened and why the boy was so significant, let's talk more about Lindsay. As she grew up, Lindsay was the girl that always had the highest grades. Lindsay would always make sure to take part in any activity she could. She was competitive and would always try to be on top. But one night, she stunned her parents with something they didn't expect. She came home talking about wanting to sign some organ donation forms from the hospital she was volunteering at. Her mom recalled, "We thought it was a good gesture and encouraged her to do it." Lindsay was an intelligent girl and never hesitated. She wasn't indecisive, and soon she returned home with a donation card from the hospital. But it wasn't too far in the future that they would lose her. Tammy still remembers the day it happened. Her daughter was out with her best friends. They had been on their way back from school and had been in a fatal accident. They were all taken straight to the ER. Tammy froze when she heard the news. Then her body went into overdrive, and she found herself racing to the hospital. What she found would render her speechless. Tammy couldn't believe the news she was hearing. Her body seized up. Tammy was barely in the emergency room when the doctors pronounced Lindsay dead. She fought to stay by her daughter's side when Lindsay's soul passed on. Tammy had only just arrived at the emergency room when they told her. The days after that blurred into weeks, with everything around Tammy and Chester losing color and intrigue. They had been so broken by their loss until that fateful week. It had been a couple of months since they had to say goodbye to their daughter. To help herself grieve, Tammy would go visit Lindsay's grave every day after work, but she knew that her daughter wouldn't want her or Chester to linger and stay sad forever. They knew that for her, they would have to face the facts. But something strange would happen just moments later. Tammy was walking from her daughter's grave when she noticed a boy passing. He was no older than 7, with blonde hair and steel gray eyes, and had a small backpack. He smiled at Tammy and waved as he walked by. She didn't think much of it at first, but noticed something as the days continued counting. Tammy ran into the same boy the following evening. The week would continue in this same manner before Tammy decided she'd at least try to see why the boy was always at the cemetery at that time of day. As the new week started, she decided to stay back after greeting the boy on her path back to her car. As always, he smiled, waved, and walked by her, but this time, she didn't leave. Tammy shadowed the boy with her phone's camera recording, only to see him walk to Lindsay's tombstone. He stood over it for some seconds before sitting down. The scene didn't make any sense to Tammy, who stopped recording. She couldn't think of why the boy was next to her daughter's grave. Thinking maybe he confused the tombstones, she decided to step in. As Tammy walked towards the boy, she wondered if he might be one of Lindsay's friends. However, she realized he was too young to have known her daughter well. She made sure to make some noise so she wouldn't startle him, then greeted him and asked why he was at Lindsay's grave. "I asked him if he knew Lindsay, and he said no," Tammy told a reporter. She also learned something about the boy that deeply moved her. He had been fighting a rare heart condition. After Lindsay passed away, he received her heart in a transplant, which saved his life. But why was he visiting Lindsay's grave every evening if he never met her? "Where's your mom?" Tammy asked. The boy had heard from his mom about Lindsay and what she had done for him. For the past 2 weeks, he had been asking his mom to take him to the cemetery so he could talk to Lindsay about his healing process. Tammy shared, tears of joy in her eyes. The boy's mother was waiting for him in the parking lot. That's when Tammy approached her and learned about all the hardships the boy and his family had faced. Little Sam had been born with a rare heart condition called unbalanced atrioventricular canal defect. This heart defect allowed blood to move freely through the 4 chambers of his heart, causing problems with his heart and lungs. A normal heart has sept chambers to keep the blood from the lungs from mixing with other blood from the rest of the body. By the time Sam was 2, he'd already undergone 4 open heart surgeries, although the surgeries seemed to help, and Sam was able to live a relatively normal life for a few years. Things changed when he turned 6. Although he'd been on the heart transplant list since he was 3, no viable hearts had been donated. Sam's condition continued to worsen. His mom, Jane, was beginning to lose hope. According to the American Heart Association, the average wait for a heart transplant depends on several factors. However, it's hardly ever a quick process. Sam had to wait 40 years, which is longer than most. When he was 6, his heart began to fail. He was hospitalized and had to stay there until a heart became available. With a serious shortage of donated organs, some people wait years to receive a heart transplant. In fact, around 3,500 Americans are on the heart transplant waiting list at any given time, and they are usually critically ill or die by the time one becomes available. Sam was deteriorating right in front of his family's eyes, but all they could do was pray and wait. Sam's case was particularly challenging as they needed a heart that was the perfect size and blood type. Jane vividly remembers the day she received the news of the transplant. Sam was admitted for surgery the next day, while Tammy and Chester had just received the news about their daughter Lindsay. Sam's surgery was successful, and Jane noticed an immediate improvement in his condition. Before the transplant, Sam's skin had been a blue-gray color due to lack of oxygenated blood. After the surgery, his skin color improved drastically, and his breathing and oxygen levels normalized. Jane expressed her gratitude on Facebook, thanking the family who had donated the precious gift of life to her son. "We will be forever grateful for this selfless act for the family who saved our son's life," Jane said. "Always have faith because miracles do happen." Jane made it her mission to find out who had donated their heart to her son. She learned about the donor, Lindsay, through the United Network for Organ Sharing. After finding Lindsay's obituary, Jane wanted to express her gratitude to the McRae family but waited for the right time. She told Sam about Lindsay and he insisted on visiting her grave. When Jane finally met Tammy, Lindsay's mother, she shared her story, which moved Tammy deeply. Meeting Sam, who carried a piece of Lindsay with him, stirred complex emotions in Tammy. Grief, though dulled, still weighed heavily on her, especially seeing how Lindsay's heart had saved Sam's life. As the emotions washed over her, Tammy, who had been silent until then, finally asked a question. Tammy struggled to grasp the situation. The sudden loss of her daughter Lindsay had been incredibly difficult to accept. Now, in a way, Lindsay was still with her. Through tears, Tammy asked, "May I hear it? May I listen to her heart?" Sam, Lindsay's heart recipient, nodded. She knelt down, placed her ear against his chest, and closed her eyes. There it was, the quick, strong thud, thud, thud of Lindsay's heart. Tammy let herself be enveloped by its rhythm, soothing her searing pain like a cool balm. For the first time in months, she felt a sense that everything would be okay. She loved to share, so a part of her life and giving some of it to Sam and other children is part of who she was, Tammy said, smiling. Tammy contacted the United Network for Organ Sharing to learn who had received Lindsay's other organs. It turned out that her daughter had saved 8 other lives with her organs. The day she died, 2 people had her lungs, another had her liver, and others had various other vital pieces of her. The McRae family met all of them, but they felt closest to Sam, the little boy who had her heart. Tammy and Chester had forgotten that their daughter had signed up to be an organ donor before passing and couldn't believe she had saved so many lives. "It's truly the circle of life in its rawest form," Tammy said. She could never let a soul suffer if she could do something about it. That's our Lindsay for.